Hi, I'm your state treasurer, Colleen Davis, and I've started this new project where we talk to thought leaders here in the state of Delaware, as well as internationally. And essentially, we love speaking with individuals whose work intersects with the work that I do here in the treasurer's office. Today, we have Emmanuel Jenkins joining us. Emmanuel, I've admired your work for some time. And, because of the work that you do in the Delaware Developmental Disabilities Council, I believe today it couldn't be more warranted. How would you say that you got involved in this advocacy, and what are some of the goals of the council from your perspective?
Wow, great question. But I first got to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to have this conversation with you. The whole idea of advocacy and really speaking up for all people started for me back in 2014. I have always had a voice of speaking up for others, but I took a program that's offered by the council called Partners in Policymaking. Partners in Policymaking really gave me the tools to be able to advocate the smart way. There's a difference between arguing and advocating. So Partners really gave me the tools to be able to advocate. So everything that we do is designed around ensuring that people with intellectual disabilities have those opportunities as everyone else.
Your work is truly amazing and absolutely has been inspirational for so many of us. Is there a way to go a little deeper in sort of some of that description that you're giving us, specifically around financial freedom and independence, that you are so passionate about? Also, what does it mean for someone with a disability within the disability community? How important are financial tools? How important is financial wellness and planning and coaching in all of this?
So when we really look at financial independence for a person with a disability, or for all Americans, what is financial independence? And what does that mean? What does it mean for each individual? Because what it may look like for you may be different for what it may look like for me. And it's really important for individuals with disabilities that have the opportunity. We go back to that word opportunity, because that's what it really comes down to, having the opportunity to be financially independent, to have some understanding of financial literacy and what does it mean to save, what does it mean to withdraw, what does it mean to do a deposit. And we have to understand that people with disabilities don't always get the opportunity to receive the same education as everyone else. So then there's a different layer of challenges, because some people don't know what it means to budget. They never got taught to budget, and how if you swipe your debit card too many times, that can end up in overdraws. What is an overdraw and things like that. So we are working hard at the council to build a relationship with, especially your office, to really join forces to highlight things like the ABLE accounts and, third-party accounts and trusts and things like that. So we are dedicated to just ensuring that people with disabilities have those opportunities to learn those things.
Well, I think one of the things that you touched on was just that some of this work is extremely impactful, and I think often goes unnoticed. From your perspective and from what you're hearing on the ground, how would you say that the disability community is adapting to everything? How are you adapting? And maybe are there opportunities?
The golden outline to the whole coronavirus thing is that people with disabilities have always been adapting. And
That's
now
a good point.
now it's up to the rest of America, the rest of the country, to adapt to this global pandemic. So when the coronavirus started, a month before it started, I was already starting to transition working from home due to some health challenges. But I'm currently working on the ground, so I hear things from the community. And one of the things that people are dealing with now is that as you said, when you have a disability, you have other things that you got to consider. Financially, do you pay for the DART bus? You might get to the pharmacy and not got the money for your copay because you had to put it on your transportation. So now that COVID has happened, we are really looking at sustainability. Our state has worked really hard to put things in place to ensure that we can come out of this thing on top. But these challenges that we're having is not just because of COVID. COVID was able to put a magnifying glass on them and make them larger, but it's always been a challenge. But I think that's where financial independence and financial literacy comes in. How to put away for those winter storms, how to put away for pandemics. You got to start to prepare before things like that happen. And that's challenging for people with disabilities. But I imagine that it's challenging for all people. But we have to consider medication and accommodations and things like that. So we, as I said, we're working hard to ensure that we have these conversations pretty regularly to ensure people with disabilities are ready for whatever comes.
You mentioned some of those items that you have to think about in the way that you budget and things like that. I think that some items, just like you said, sort of thinking about whether or not you take the DART bus or you pay the pharmacy for your recent prescription. All of that budgeting can just be a little bit more complex with folks with disabilities. How did you master that? And did it take you some time? Did someone walk you through it? What did that look like for you?
Great question. I learned through trial and error. I moved away. I moved away from home when I was 19. Great story there. My mother didn't know I was leaving until the call pulled up to get my belongings. But I remember, getting my first electric bill and not realizing that I knew I got a due date, but when I got the second notice, it was yellow. And I got the next notice, it was pink. And when I realized what pink meant was they were going to cut it off, I remember having to ride in my wheelchair to the electric company, to the city of Seaford, to pay my electric bill. So it wasn't that I didn't have the money. It's just that, going to the grocery store or buying the video game was more priority. So I learned through trial and error. And financial knowledge and financial independence is a little bit more easier when you have a spouse who is like, make sure you pay the electric bill, make sure you pay the car payment, the car insurance, things like that. But I really learned by trial and error, and this is why, connecting with you in your office to ensure that people don't have to learn by trial and error. Because trial and error didn't feel so good,
I'm sure.
It didn't feel so good, but it taught me a great lesson. It did, and I am not by far, I am not a financial genius, but I do know how to put things in perspective and priority, and it feels good to not be late on a bill and notices in the bell saying if you don't pay this, we're gonna cut it off. But I tell you, it really came down to trial and error.
Well, I will say you may not be a financial guru, but you're certainly a financial success, and so that's keep that feather in your cap there, and I give you kudos. Certainly, in these uncertain times, I'm glad that we have folks like you, Emmanuel. It's really, really wonderful, not just talking with you, but all the great work that you're doing, and I really appreciate being able to call you my friend. And
thank you.
Being able to, when I see you from afar, just that quick eye contact, we both know I need to talk to you. I do want to remind everyone that if you want to find out more information on ABLE accounts, you can go to my website, treasurer.delaware.gov. And for more information about Emmanuel's work at the DDC, on the council, he can also be found, and their work can be found at ddc.delaware.gov. And thank you again, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much.